Welcome back to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored with Caroline Stanbury. I'm here today in my closet, hiding from the world. And, I did a sort of deep dive in what you guys want to know about and what interests you and like about me and Sergio and having relationships today. And I think why people are scared is we know that most marriages end in divorce. It is just a fact. And there are multiple reasons for that today. Back in the day, we didn't have the choices we have. We're flooded. The multitude of reasons. One being, I think, social media, mobile phones. We have more opportunity, more money, more choice available to us. So many things. Okay, so people just give up so easily. I got divorced after 18 years, and now I actually find that quite normal because I got married in my 20s. I've changed a million times. I've moved, I've grown. If you haven't grown and changed, and sometimes you grow with a partner and sometimes you grow apart from a partner. And I think what I have this time round, which wasn't so popular back in the day when I got married, which is to go into business with your husband and sort of, form a partnership. And some of the most successful, wealthy people I know today are couples because actually everything we've been taught, which is to, have your own thing. And obviously I'm a big believer in have your own thing, but that doesn't mean work against each other, right? Obviously, when you are having babies and doing all of this, some people want to stay home, but you can still back up your partner. If you have a business together, the little things that you could do from home, like make the phone calls, answer the emails, do all the appointments for your husband, just means that you can both focus on the one business and really go further. Whereas I think if you're not working with your husband at that time, you've actually taken leave. You're actually doing nothing. Not only do you lose your skill set in the business field, and I get a lot of women that have come to me saying, my children have grown up and I want to do something, but they don't know what it takes anymore. Because this world is incredibly fast and hard. And, they want to have, also life is a very long time. When you have disposable income when you're younger and you don't have responsibilities like children. So you can, really have this lavish lifestyle and, really spend money on silly things if you want, which we all want to do. When I was younger, I don't know, I had the convertible car, I had the apartment. I would buy all the things. And now I have to think a little bit more because I have salaries and I have tens of thousands of pounds to spend every month before I've bought anything. Nothing for me. So I don't want to leave that to Sergio to take it on. I mean, I could never have left that to Sergio anyway to take it on because he was 24 years old when I met him. So I knew I wasn't going to get that lifestyle that was just handed to me. And it is a lifestyle, right? A lifestyle that we all want. So the biggest question about things like prenups, going into it, especially when you want to choose your life partner and you want to choose somebody that you love and not somebody that you have to be with for different reasons, right? So I think a lot of older women don't consider younger men just because of the financial situation. They don't want to pay for it and they feel like they're having to pay for it. I get it so much. The number one question you guys give me is sex or money. There really isn't much else, or whether I worry about later on in life. I mean, I can worry about later on in life with anybody. So no. I wouldn't give up what I have with Sergio for anything, right? So I think there comes a time, because I fell for it. All of you guys gave me so much shit at the beginning about dating a 24-year-old at my age and how ridiculous I was and how he's going to fuck me over and just wait. I think that, by the way, this is not my bra. I'm in a house thing, but you're only seeing me like this, just putting it out there. But Kurtz, cut this a little bit. Sorry. But you're only seeing, a small snippet of it. So at the beginning, when Sergio had to jump through so many hoops because I was like, well, even though he's doing all the back end and, really helping me produce the money, at the end of the day, I have an upper hand anyway, because like, what's he going to do? Take my podcast? It's my voice. What's he going to do? Take my Instagram? It's me, right? What's he going to do? Go and do my adverts for me? He can't steal anything from me because I am the brand. So at the end of the day, he has to really, really trust me, not me, him, which is what I think people have got it wrong, because I can go out and hire Sergio in different forms. Obviously, they won't be as good as Sergio because he knows my voice. He loves me. He wants the best for me. But I can replace Sergio. Unfortunately, in our businesses, he cannot replace me. And so instead of me being like, oh, what's he going to take from me? Actually, if he really sits down, and I don't want him to, and thinks about this, what I could take from him. Except Sergio is the least money-grabbing person I've ever met in my entire life. He doesn't give a shit about money. Like, he genuinely doesn't. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Like, I have bought him things, because I like them, because I'm walking around his store or whatever, and he just doesn't go shopping, and he just returns them. He's not sat here counting his cash. Like, granted, we had a long talk at the beginning. And because when I found out he got younger and younger, and people were telling me he didn't play for Real Madrid and he didn't do this, and he was working at Louis Vuitton and all of these things, right? That I checked out everything myself. He did many different things because he was in university and getting his master's, and you have to do certain things at that time. Anyway, I really couldn't give a shit either way, by the way. That's not, again, he made me happy. So I really didn't care if he was a busboy. But what he has done is prove time and time and time again how solid he is, right? So what did we do? And obviously I was established and I got a certain amount of money that I had before, and a certain amount of money that, I was going to get in alimony. So I wanted that to go to my children. Like, obviously, my ex-husband was absolutely adamant that if anything happens, Sergio doesn't get one penny of his alimony. And actually, they're friends now, so I really don't give it, either way. But, when I purchase certain things, I made sure that they were just for the children. And I do that out of respect, because I also don't want my ex-husband paying for my boyfriend in any way, shape or form, or him getting anything that Jem ever gave me. Would not happen. But the things that we built together, it will for either way, right? And that gives him comfort and it gives me comfort. So, I have always, and actually I'm probably due to do it again now, we had a prenup, a very clear one from the beginning. Like, my art that I collected before him would not go to him. My jewelry that my ex-husband has given me will go to my kids, not Sergio. The money that he had in the bank, I took it and I invested it with our things so that we can own property and we can own things that we acquire together. The money that I earn, or we earn now from the work that we do together, it's just in a joint account. He can take it whenever he wants, but he doesn't. He really doesn't. But the prenup, I think is not an insult. It really is a modern marriage of communication. And I think that is invaluable. That actually strengthens you because there is no panic. I've heard horror stories about women being presented ironclad prenups the night before they got married. How hideous is that? I would just think, what an asshole, not to want to do this the right way. Not because he's giving me a prenup. It's because he's expecting me not to sign it. So he's doing it in a way that I am captured because all my wedding guests are here and everyone's here for me. And how am I going to get out of it now? What an awful way to start a marriage. That's an awful way to start a marriage. An awful way to start a marriage is not by, asking very normal questions. It used to be an insult, but actually I think a prenup is possibly the most loving thing that you can do for someone else. Because, you're talking about why and what things have changed and what to expect, it's fear of the unknown, right? Just because you get married doesn't mean that your life is sorted. Of course it's not. You may get marriage is a very long, very tough thing, and you need to be prepared for the best and prepared for the worst. I've done prenup, we've done a postnup, and I'm going to keep doing that as we, maintain assets. And I've just done my what's it called when you die? Oh my God. Will. That's it. I've just done my will. Again, out of respect for Sergio and my children, just because, first of all, I live in the Middle East, so it's Sharia law unless you register in English law courts, which I've just done. So that actually forced me into doing it quicker than I normally would have probably. But also what it did do is it caused a lot of conversation again, because a prenup is just like a will. If you're earning and you're the breadwinner, you need to know what happens if that person drops dead. And I have friends whose husbands just dropped dead overnight. It's possible, especially at all our ages. So, that was something that Sergio and we had a lot of difficult conversations around this because, as you know, my husband is a hoarder. He's also he's very emotional and he's very attached to things. And, we have a few homes now and, whatever is going to be his versus my children. But one of the homes really has to be sold immediately. And that's a choice. One of them has to go because the children need to have money immediately. And these are things that, conversations you really, really need to be sure on. They're not always, they don't always go the way they want you to, but it's better to have the argument now, trust me. And also because once it's done, you have another layer of confidence and love for that person, and you're not scared. You don't want to be in a relationship that you feel scared to leave. You really aren't. You really, really want to be in a relationship because you want to be there, not because you have to be there. What a horrible place to be. And as a man, why would you want a wife that has to be there? It's crazy. Having an open, cold conversation at the beginning just changes everything, and that line where I thought it's just because you didn't trust me, that's actually the opposite of what a prenup does. It's because I do trust you. It means that I have respect for you. I want you to know what would happen to you if anything went wrong. They are also, I think prenups used to be done for, or have this sort of connotation that only for really rich people that had tons of assets. That's also bollocks. There's a million reasons to have a prenup regardless. They're for smart people who want to be able to marry for love, right? And to be able to marry the right way. It's so important. It's a real conversation. It doesn't have to be this legal showdown between lawyers and you sitting one table and your partner sitting the other. It's a conversation about love. And you do it at the beginning because you are in love, money, and what happens when they collide. And you obviously want to be able to have that, and when our parents got married, they didn't have the opportunity, as I said, to do that. And now, men get married later in life, which is around 30, women around 29, 26 and a half. So there are more assets involved. And by the way, prenup can also save you from debt. Remember that, debt. And there's more to protect, right? Because if you do have children with somebody in the past, they're due something. Sorry, they're due something. Not the new husband. You have kids. You need to protect your children too. And I think marriage is no longer what everybody does, right? It's no longer, and people are scared to remarry now. So you want to take the fear out of it. And I don't know if you know this, but 27% of marriages in 2025, this was crazy, actually started on a dating app. And swiping is now an official path to the altar. So, it also is very fast. And it's 6 times dating app. they divorce 6 times more than normal couples, because it's probably, I mean, if I'm really looking at it, it's people can't be bothered to date. It's fast moving, fast pace, fast love, fast everything, fast divorce, right? People don't try as hard. People aren't as committed as they used to be. As I said, if you're going, there's another one down the road that you can get. I actually heard a crazy statistic yesterday that 53% of divorces are caused by paddle or paddle. And that really made me howl laughing, because apparently, all the women get dressed up. They go to the paddle courts. They look amazing. They meet other looking great, amazing people and swap numbers. And there you go again. And all these husbands are out at work making money, and all the women are too. You get separate interests, separate friends. And then you come home, you're tired, and your spouse is the last person you're looking at. So, I can see how it happens. It used to not be paddle. It used to be your trainer. So, and it really is. It's not a plan to get divorced. It's a plan to protect each other if you do get divorced. It really is. It's in your best interest and in their best interest. And I think we just need to flip the script. And, I think 87% of couples who get prenups and clarify separate versus marital property win at a divorce. Win. Because it's already done. It's already clear. You have to spend more money on lawyers. And, it's so important. Student debt is another thing. Basically, if you have a lot of student debt, if you have a prenup, you can protect your partner from student debt. I don't know if you knew that, or for any of your debt, really. And, a prenup, there are platforms out there. Actually, I did an interview with a lady. I can't remember. I think it was called Hello Prenup or something. Prenup platforms can only charge $600, whereas a divorce is $15,000 minimum. Okay, so the maths ain't mathing. Like, what would you rather have? And also, there's no winner in a divorce, right? It's just better that you get on with it and do it the right way. And I think Sergio and I have a prenup. As I said, we have a postnup, and we do it for everything that we have. Even when we do our businesses together, obviously we have shareholdings. We separate everything. We treat each other like we're business partners as well as lovers. I'm very, very direct. So, he's a little more sensitive. It took him a while. Oh, excuse me. It took him a while to understand it. But now he does. I think he's really, really grateful for it, because he absolutely knows what he'll get if he leaves me, if I die, if he dies, where it goes and how it goes, all of these things. I think he's really grateful for it, because he has a real sense of security from it, right? Even if he did the worst and left me, I wouldn't want Sergio not to have anything. It's not what he deserves. He deserves to have something. He's worked very hard, and he's built a beautiful family with me, and that's it. And, I think the conversation at the beginning was very hard, because obviously he's of that old school thing that a prenup is, because you want to take everything and you don't want him to have anything. And, he will have nothing because he's moved into my life and all of these things. And now I think he gets it, because what I did is I actually walked out of the room, because my lawyer was with me. Our lawyer was with me. And he got very emotional about the house and what assets we would sell if I passed away, and which ones, he could keep versus sharing with my kids, right? Not because he doesn't want to give them to my kids. He absolutely wants my kids to have all the money in the world. It's just because I think it's like anything. He loves to hold on to memories, and he feels certain assets that we have will remind him a lot of me. But, she really calmed him down. Having a lawyer that's impartial, who explains why we do certain things, why it's best for him. You don't want to be having shared assets with an entire family that you all have to argue whether it's ever going to be sold to pull out your money. What if one of you's struggling? What if one of you needs the cash? You have to be able to force the other people to sell so that, or sell your part. They can buy it from you. So that there is no argument. It's clear. And after that, he really, really got it. And obviously, Sergio's got 20 years less than me. So some of these things were tough to explain to him, but once we had explained it in a certain way, and sometimes making it not out of my mouth and somebody else, really, really helped him. It really helped him. And I think also watching his parents go through a divorce now also has sort of made him understand how to do it in a way that, you can still be in the same room and all of these kind of things. And I think he sees now it protects me, it protects him. And, we did it before the wedding. Absolutely, we did it before the wedding, because I think if you can't have these conversations with your partner, then they're not your partner. It's that simple. I think fast culture and slow commitment, this is what's sort of happening. When you match with 50 people in the same night and you feel, it's a crazy world we live in. Just swiping left and right. And you match with so many different people on a night and you get excited, and it's just chaotic. It's a world of less commitment today. And like a bit like a dating recession, no one wants to commit or spend money or, go into it and also I think men are scared of what women want. I think if you look at Instagram, it would look like you can't be a multimillionaire and sorry, unless you're a multimillionaire, you can't date a woman. That's what it looks like, because it looks like you have to buy them watches and Birkin bags and jewelry, and that's just not so. Like, obviously we all like it and it would be nice to have one once in a while, but that's not the ideology of marriage. Marriage is marry the man who can't live without you, the one that will be there for you, because the rest of it is absolutely not something you give a shit about on your deathbed. I can assure you that. I've never, ever seen someone lying on their deathbed going, fetch me my Birkin. It doesn't happen. If anything, we all want less, not more. And I think, I'm seeing what writing your prenup is actually really a good thing in your will, because you see what's valuable and what's not. The waste that we have, again, obviously I like shallow things too, but I'm also super proud of myself for my art collection, my property, my jewelry that I can actually hand down that has something value that I can give my children, my husband, all of these things. I think people are scared to bring up these subjects and not trigger their partner. Again, if you are triggering your partner by bringing up the subject that's important to all of you to make you safe, either he's the wrong partner, or maybe they've got the wrong idea for you. Maybe they are trying to steal something for you, because I certainly wouldn't give a shit if my new husband said to me, can we have a prenup? And this is what's going to happen. I'd be over the moon, because I'd feel really good, because in the world where it is swipe 50 times and get matched with anyone that night, it is very, 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 very possible my marriage could end up in divorce. So I would like to know what that leaves me with, and what that looks like for me. Will I have a home if I've built the home? Will I have a car? Will I have any income if I've stopped working for you and I start to be on my own? How will I take care of myself? Yes, I want to ask all those questions. And if you trigger somebody by asking those questions, then, well, that's a red flag to me, And I think it's one of the most romantic things you can do, and loving things, as I've said. It's so different now to how we were 20 years ago. It just is. Have money conversations before the wedding. I have them. So important. No surprises. There are so many different things. I mean, first of all, get a family law attorney. Walk through a modern prenup, what that looks like. If it's enforceable. Look at all the things. Look at mainstream media. Listen to people. Listen to other people's experiences. Get a financial advisor if that's the sort of money we're looking at. Get an advisor who shows you or tells you, or, we've got ChatGPT at this point. We've got Claude. Ask people how to protect your wealth, and to build wealth as a woman, right? So I am shocked by how many women still want to rely on their husbands for everything still. I mean, I live in Dubai, so everything is about trying to do less, I suppose. Of course, there are lots of women I do aspire to be here, but there are lots of women who still want that sort of credit card free, go and lie on the beach, get your nails done and go to the spa lifestyle. I want a lifestyle, which I think I have, a really good lifestyle that I have managed to pay for, that I will sustain with or without my husband. I also want my husband to have that for himself for many different reasons. That, again, his balls are not removed by me. He has grown so much because of me, and if you look at prenups are now a huge part of the fintech companies, and it's super important and it's very easy to find. So you can't even say today that you can't get a prenup or it's too expensive, because that's bollocks. They're all online now. Everything is online. Actually, everything's at our fingertips. There is no excuse anymore. It's not crazy expensive, but it is crazy expensive if you don't get one. I think all of these things are, something, again, that I find crazy to me, that you have sex with somebody, you're having a relationship with somebody, but you cannot have these conversations with somebody. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. How can you marry someone who's not prepared to talk to you about some of the most important things there are? It makes no sense to me. None. And I would re-look at why somebody doesn't want to have this conversation with you, really, and what that means for you. Because I don't want someone in my life that I'm going to have to fight for every penny. And I know lots of people that have. And, I'm going to do it, isn't doing it. I have one girlfriend, who I'm not going to name names, obviously, but I do have a girlfriend who got divorced, was living in the craziest home, actually quite a few of these, actually, and the craziest homes. And she got divorced, and he had said the house, which she did up, I think it was like 20,000 square feet, something crazy. And he had said the house was in her name. And it wasn't. And she didn't know, because he told her he'd done it. And so you want to see all this. You want to see what's been done. I want to see the paperwork. You cannot just trust that someone is going to do the right thing. You cannot. And I don't know why you would want to do that. She genuinely thought the house had been left to her and the kids, and that just wasn't so. And now she is in a tiny apartment, which he may or may not have to pay for at some stage. And she's at his beck and call. So even though they're divorced, she has to live by his rules, essentially, because he can still control her about for money. And that is a terrible, terrible place to be. Why would you put yourself in that situation when you've just done the hardest thing there is, which is leave? Now you're living with him again, but just in another house, except he's got a girlfriend, and he's still controlling you for the bills and the everything else. If you just had this prenup and it was all done, the right way, these things wouldn't happen. They can't happen. And the law is a funny thing. And I've said it before and I'll say it again too. You know, it's amazing how rich they are. Well, sorry, it's amazing how poor they are, the day you get divorced. Men don't want to just hand it over. They don't. I don't care how much they say they love you, how much, things change. They really change. You won't recognize the person you're married to. You won't, because something will happen. There'll either be another woman, or, you've triggered them a certain way, or they feel left, or they feel abandoned. You are leaving a lot up to the gods. A lot. And why? For what reason? Everything's so readily available. It's so readily available. Back then it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. Like it was like a dirty secret to run to a lawyer. Now you should have a family lawyer that that you can trust and say, look, and you can say, this is my intention. I would like her to have. We built this together. And then everybody's heard it. And there's no taking it back in the nicest possible way. You know what I mean? He can't just run, or you can't just run and whip it away from them, because it's there in black and white for nothing. $500. Like, why wouldn't you just do it? Even if you don't use it, do it. It's just there as a protection. And that's the question I don't understand. It's like, people saying that they're lonely in their marriages and all of this. Well, of course you're lonely. Who's not lonely if you can't have simple conversations, or uncomfortable ones? Uncomfortable ones actually, they resolve themselves. And if they don't resolve themselves, you're marrying the wrong person again. Another red flag. Don't marry somebody that you can't have an honest, deep, hard conversation with, because you're going to have plenty. Throw kids in, ladies. Throw in kids, throw in moving country, throw in maybe losing your money. You know how many people I know that have, their husbands have lost their jobs or their money. And then what? If you can't have conversations that are real and authentic and true, and think of things that pop up on the way, then this is not your man. This is not your person. You can't be this amazingly perfect woman all the time, and who just turns a blind eye. Like, I never asked about how much money my ex-husband had, never, because I was working so hard. Now I kind of sometimes, I wish I had. I wish I knew what it all was, but I don't really care anymore. I'm in a position that I will never be in that position, right? But I made sure that Sergio knows everything. He has to know everything. And I had to know everything. I even know what we'll inherit if his parents go, or, my parents go, or, what happens if my UK house sells, all of these things. What happens if we sell Bali? Sergio and I have separate shareholdings in Bali, so that there is no argument. He is his own entity. We earned that money together. He's his own entity, and I want him to have it. Even if I hated him, I want him to have it. I don't want to squeeze someone dry so they have nothing. Why do you want to do that to the one person that you loved, who's been with you for years? I don't want to do that. I can still, have perfectly nice outings with my ex-husband. That's down to me not fighting crazily. I remember, when it was a bit ugly and he wanted some stupid thing like another housemaid back, and I just rolled my eyes and gave it to him. Like, who gives a shit? I'll get another one. Eventually, couldn't care less. Do your worst. And that's the thing, once you're sort of over that and you can hold your own and you have your own, nothing really, they lose all the power of being able to sort of make you do things that you don't want, or make you feel shit even. You don't even have to take phone calls anymore. That's the power of a prenup, because it's so black and white. You don't have to negotiate anything. It's done. They can scream, they can shout, they can, hate you, but it's done. Bad luck. Honor the prenup and goodbye. And that's where it is. And a prenup is an outline of intention, right? But I mean, of course, sometimes those can be overridden or things can change if you lose your money, or, sometimes men have a team of lawyers and, you can still be fucked. Don't get me wrong. But it is a very strong indication of what you both set out to achieve together. And I'd much rather, take my chances with one today than without one, I can assure you. Because legal fees, having been through it, are astronomical. And it's funny because I've seen really wealthy women too get divorced, think they're going to get gazillions. And I thought they were going to get gazillions, and it just hasn't worked out that way. And they didn't take the first offer. They all go, they're going to hang on and get the next offer. And the next offer wasn't as good as the first offer. And that's where they've been left. And, you have to be clever. You can't be greedy. Today, you've just got to be clever. And the first offer, ladies, is normally the best offer. Let me tell you that. The first offer is normally the best offer you're going to get. And I think to try and enter marriages that, as I said, they're so easy come, easy go today, which is a shame. It is a shame. But, again, that is the culture. It's even more important than it was, because we are opening ourselves up to such a big world here. It doesn't matter what country the other person's in. People can meet people all over the world. The world is a tiny place now. Tiny, tiny, tiny place. And Instagram has made everyone connectable. Anyone. I can reach out to and meet anyone I wanted to, as could he. And I think that's not only amazing, it's also bloody scary, quite frankly, that it's so open. And I think that if this doesn't make you think about getting a prenup or having a conversation with your husband, and by the way, ladies, doesn't have to be before you got married. If you've been married for a long time and suddenly are going, shit, this is resonating with me, I actually don't know what would happen to me, do it now. You're certainly going to see his colors when it comes out. Don't be unreasonable. Like this, whole thing of like taking them for everything they're worth. If you're not unreasonable and you're not greedy, there's no reason that someone's going to leave you high and dry. For what reason would they do that? But I would suggest you do the prenup when you are at the beginning of a relationship and you're still in that love bubble, rather than the end of a relationship. But I mean, if you're thinking about it at all, I still can't advise you enough just to get on with it and review it all the time. Review it every couple of years. What have you added to the pot? What assets have come into your marriage that you have gained together? They need to be reviewed. They need to be added. They need to be looked at for you, for the kids. I know people that have, inherited homes that they are allowed to stay in till they're 21 with their children, right? Till the kids are 21. And then after that, it reverts to trusts. So also, if you've got a lot of money at stake or there are trusts involved, you need to understand how that works. Because, a lot of these trusts are very, very crafty at how they set themselves up so that, they maintain the money. And as you get older, if you've been in one of these relationships, it is harder to go back to work today. There is so much to learn. It is not easy, and you have to work all hours of the day. I think, you just do. That's what life, to get ahead today, you have to be a grafter. And, that's very hard if you've spent a lot of time at home, or, you've been out of the workforce for a certain period of time. Also just how much technology's moved on. To build our business, we have to post 15 times a day. We take calls morning, noon, and night. Some women haven't been in the workforce at all for 15 years. 15 years. So you need to protect yourself big time, because being a mum isn't recognized as a full-time job, even though it probably should be, absolutely. But it's not recognized. What would you have earned all those years? Maybe that's a way to look at it. You could have that conversation. Like if I have, a baby and another baby and another baby, maybe I would have earned this amount of salary And, each year I need to have that put away from me so that I can have money when I'm older. And actually, if you start doing it that way, by the way, it's not such a massive hit the other end. Maybe that was a really good idea. And it also means that you have money in your account that you're able to go and buy the shoes, go and buy the jeans, go and get your hair done, that you're not always doing this terrible thing going, please can I, or thinking, I'm going to put it on my husband's credit card. No, you've got a credit card. You're a team. You're a team, like if he's able to sleep at night early and you're up all night, like that's teamwork to make the dream work. I don't understand how that's not incredibly obvious. These are things that are important. Or both of you go back to work and get a nanny. That's how it ends. And that's the conversation. Do you want me to have a nanny or do you want me to do the whole thing? Either way, it's a job, because actually going to work, trust me, ladies, after having 3 children, I can assure you going to work is a much, much easier task. I absolutely used to jog out of my house going, thank God I'm out. I couldn't do baby talk for very long. And I've just been listening to Emma Grede. And although I don't have like the same ambition as she does now, but I do agree with a lot of things that she says, which is, it takes real graft and it is a payoff. It is a payoff. And a lot of women don't want to do it. And I understand that. And you don't have to. But there needs to be a thing where it's not all or nothing, right? Where you just become this housewife, because the housewife is super dangerous today. Because children, as they get older, they don't get easier. That's a myth. I don't know who told us babies are really hard work and then, it's so easy. Children get harder. They require so much more attention and so much more work. And, I see it every day with my kids and, I love them all dearly, but it's bloody difficult to juggle everything. But I've never left the workforce. So, children can be the source of a lot of divorces because, you go on holiday. I mean, a holiday makes me laugh, right? Let's just put holidays. Holidays can be the number one place to get divorced because a holiday with your husband's fantastic. When I go to the Maldives with Sergio, it's the best time of my life. Like, absolutely love it. Holiday with your kids. It's not a fucking holiday. Who calls it a holiday? It is military camp. First of all, when I go on holiday, I don't have the same staff with me. So we're doing it. We're carrying everything. We've got all the luggage. There's tons of us. The flights. So there's 5 flights before we've even left. Then it's like 3 of them with different schedules. Lunch, dinner, hair, parties. I'm not having a holiday. They are having a holiday. Sergio and I are not on holiday. We call it war. When we go on holiday, we go to war. So we are prepared to put ourselves second, and we understand that everything on that holiday is about the kids. We only have to do it 2 weeks. So it's, 2 weeks in a row. We kind of just go, okay, he and I travel a lot together. We have a wonderful life. So I'm not moaning, but we put ourselves second. Everything is about what they want to do. They want to go for dinner, we go. They want to go out, we go. That's it. It's about them. So this holiday concept with kids is not a holiday. So if he was not on board, and if Sergio had a normal 9-to-5 job, right, and he was exhausted and he wants a holiday, if he had wanted a holiday, right, to switch off, that's not the holiday for him. That's not where he's going to be able to switch off at all. Sergio has to work harder than he ever works on holiday with my kids because he's got to, entertain them, swim with them, play football with them, do whatever it is. And, remember that. All of these things, life doesn't get easier. So have these conversations. Children, no matter how amazing they are, do also rip couples apart. So to be able to, I actually say that second marriages are amazing things because you actually chose that person. And I have a great relationship with my ex-husband. And that's my business partner with my kids. But I would say that that's another reason. Like, just because you've had kids with someone doesn't mean you're never going to get divorced. It's not like that. Because a lot of your relationship that was about you and him is no longer about you and him. Now it's about you, him, and the kids come first, and he's left out. So, something happens again. So prenup, right? There's no downside to this. I can't tell you enough. No downside, only upside. Only upside from here on in. So I just don't understand why we're not having these conversations. And by the way, all of these things start off difficult and like weird conversations to have with friends and people and all of this. But let me tell you, when the more common they become, the more people are like, oh, it's just reprogramming our brains to say, oh, you did a prenup too. I talk about it all the time. Yes, we did a prenup out of love, not hate. You want to do it out of love for somebody because you want to take care of them, not because you want to strangle them. Thank you for listening to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored with Caroline Stanbury. Don't forget to rate and review or subscribe. Send me questions and we'll get back to you.